While we sleep, the guardians of the night take to the streets, having said goodbye to those they love. Each other knowing they may never say these words again, they face the evil that we run from. They dedicate their lives to those that would hate them because they wear the badge. They wear the badge not for the glory or recognition, but for the passion to help others. This is the LEO First Podcast. We'll talk to the men and women in law enforcement, those that have retired, those that keep the prisons secure, and anyone who's impacted by law enforcement. We'll peel back the curtain, and you'll get the real stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Every law enforcement officer has a story to tell. Get ready to hear from the men and women who put their lives on the line every day for their communities and their country. Welcome to the LEO First Podcast. Now, here's your host, Michael Laidler.
Hey everybody, it's Michael Laidler, your host of the LEO First Podcast. I'm so excited tonight, guys. It's because my friend, my colleague, a mentor is actually on with us tonight. I actually have the privilege and opportunity to speak with him, and we're just going to have a conversation like you guys know we usually do. This time it's actually even more cooler if that's the right word to use, than some of the other episodes, only because a lot of times we forget about corrections, and our guest tonight has 25 years in the correctional setting. And it's crazy when we talk to him, you're going to hear about his experiences, his life stories, and you're going to realize, just like police officers, sheriffs, FBI agents, Border Patrol agents, corrections is just the same. It's just a different manner of law enforcement. And sometimes it's hard for us to recognize that, because once bad guys go away, we forget about them. But somebody has to watch them. And over the last 25 years, the individual we have on tonight, he's actually been part of keeping them in at multiple levels, multiple institutions, multiple states. So he's going to bring a wealth of knowledge. Without further ado, our guest for tonight is Bryan Dobbs. Bryan, tell us what you want us to know about you right out the gate. Anything you can think about.
Wow. So first off, Mike, let me just say it is absolutely my pleasure to be on this podcast with you and to get to be a part of your growth and just see the things that you are doing in life. It's we talk about who our mentors and mentees are, and I know that you look up to me as a mentor, but that goes two ways. I think you're doing a lot of things in life that under the circumstances with the rigors of the job, there are things that I would like to do at this point in my life, but I am getting closer and closer every day. So it is really my privilege to be on here with you tonight. But Bryan Dobbs as a whole, listen, I'm just going to be honest, real, and raw, because that's kind of who I am. As a inner city kid, I grew up in Long Beach, California, so I've gotten to see the reality of the streets and what that develops. But I've got the good and bad in my life and in my family. I had family in law enforcement and family who had been to prison. So I understand both sides of the street as it pertains to life on the edge and life on the edge, because either way you go, you're leaning off of a cliff. And I'm a family man. I believe in working hard, being honest, having quality character and integrity, and just leaving a legacy for my family that hopefully that they're proud of, and building up other leaders with positivity, and hoping that they achieve or exceed any goals in leadership or in life that they can possibly imagine. And those are the kind of things that I think are important to me. But the military is what gave me my opportunities, and then moving into a federal law enforcement job. I would have never had that opportunity without the structure and the life measures that were taught to me by the United States Air Force. So that's me in a little nutshell.
And I love the fact that you talked about family so early on, because in law enforcement, before you start any agency and when you end it, the family's going to be there. And I think sometimes it's hard for us to realize that because we're so focused on the mission that it's tough. I mean, given let's exclude your time in the Air Force, your time in actual law enforcement in your 25 years plus, how has that impacted you and your family?
Well, it's impacted my family positively and negatively. I think a lot of times, everybody always wants to focus on the positive because, that's what most people want to gravitate towards. But in law enforcement, I think that you have to be real and honest with who you are and the experiences that you've encountered, right? And early in my career, I was so driven by the fact that I wanted to achieve success, that I thought that the potential of chasing positions or pay grades was a primary force or factor in my life. And later in my career, those positions and those pay grades came, but my focus was different. My focus was I was doing it for my family, and I was willing not to chase those positions or that financial impact because the family did come first. In our agency, working for a federal correctional agency in the United States, it's indicative. In order to move up, you have to move.
Correct.
So in my career, I have moved numerous times around the country. I've gotten to experience the highs of the diversity changes, the culture changes, the food changes, the interactions, the things that you thought that you'd never encounter. Living in the West Coast to living in the Bible Belt to living in the Midwest,
yeah,
South to living in the Northeast. I've experienced it all, from small town atmospheres of Three Rivers, Texas, to huge incorporations like Washington, D.C., right? And the differences between those two different locations are tremendous, but you learn so much from it. So the moving, never being able to, pay off of a house, like somebody who stays with one location for an extended period of time to get themselves stable and situated. Things are different. So yes, you may move up and make more money, but no, you may not have that stability and a house paid off in 15 to 20 years. At the same token, there's the upsides. You meet so many different great people. You have all these relationship building opportunities that become lifelong friends. Now, with those moves, it's great because we get to meet all those people, but sometimes we don't focus on the facts that our families have to do the same thing, and they may not be the same type of characteristics or have the same type of characteristics that we have. Outgoing, easy to communicate and to meet people, to get themselves out of there. Where we stay with an agency and we're inside our agency moving to another location, and we may know some people from the agency that were at different locations. Right. Our family have to start over every single time. They will not know somebody from their new job. They will not know everybody from their new school. So it comes with its casualties and it comes with successes. So being able to balance life and balance family, and being able to listen to the things that are bothering your children or your spouse, being able to communicate the issues or or the experiences that they're having, being understanding, also just engaging them in every move that you do. Like you don't make change or transition without buy-in from your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those that change without buy-in, those relationships end in disaster. And these are the things that we fail, in law enforcement, I think, as a whole,
Correct.
to educate each other on, and to make sure, like, you and I have had these conversations. You do what's best for you and your son, and having that consistent relationship and not breaking any ties, creating a bigger family. In our agency, we say that we have what's called BOP family, and I
Correct.
truly believe in that. I do, and the reason why I believe in it is because I choose it. Because for a long period of time I was by myself, and the people that I worked with, when you know that you are running into the face of danger with other like-minded individuals, that you're willing to protect each other and keep each other safe and make sure that everybody goes home, in one piece together daily, that creates a relationship bond that is like no other. I mean, we're the only law enforcement agency like this, that's securing what people fear. Yes, I have an older brother that was, in the LAPD for approximately 30 years, and he used to tell me all the time, I deal with one individual at a time. You
Correct.
deal with 3, 4, 500,000, whatever it might be, every day. And he couldn't imagine that. He said, so it is different. And but I respect both sides, because I know who's with me. I know who's in my facility. Um, as a street cop, or a federal agent knocking on doors, you may not always know who's behind that door. I know exactly who's behind our doors. So
Correct. Yeah.
relationships, in those moments of uncertainty, are extremely important, because those are the people who are gonna, when everything goes bad and something happens to me, those are the people that are going to be there for my home life family. And those are the people that are going to be explaining things. So, creating that culture of of family first, even in the job environment, is extremely important. And we we do we preach it and we do it, and then we fall away from it. And it's horrible sometimes that in any law enforcement agency we're so much harder on each other, and we take things too personal, instead of understanding the professional, understanding what can affect your personal and
Right.
what affects family. So it's a family is always first.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because, as you mentioned, you've moved a lot, 11 times in 25 years. And if you wonder where I got the number from, audience, just look to LinkedIn. It's very clear. 11 different locations. And it's crazy because you compare it to someone that's worked in a municipality or even a state. And even if they moved within, let's say, Beaumont Police Department, if they moved 11 times, it's all within Beaumont. Or even if they worked for a Department of Public Service, which is out of Texas, even if they moved 11 times, it's still within the state of Texas. The federal side is extremely different because, like you said, when you're on the West Coast, Midwest, Northeast, Southeast, Texas, you're all over the place. And creating those relationships early on and continuously working on them are important, not just for yourself, but for the people that are going around with you. Because most people, there's not, as far as I can tell, and this, I don't know if there's a study or statistic, but there's not many people that are completely single, that's single through their whole career, 25, 30 years. There's not many. There are a few, but I mean, they have a family of some sort. So whether it's a child, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, there's someone that they're leaving behind to do these moves. So the fact that you have created this family first environment, and it, like you said, it wasn't always there in the beginning because you saw achievement as number one, but as you got older, and I think that's all of us, we realized that achievement's good, but family relationships are even better because you can have the greatest achievements, but those come and go. I mean, it's someday we all get kicked out of wherever we're working at. It's just how it goes, whether it's by retirement, resignation, whatever, you're going to leave. And it's out of the 10 other places you left, they're still running. And that's what I think people sometimes fail to realize is that just because you leave doesn't mean it's going to end. So it's good that you've been able to look at it differently now. And I think that's important for the audience to know that sometimes in the beginning it's hard to see, but the quicker you understand that you have to put the family first in a lot of situations, I think it allows some of the bigger decisions to leave to be a lot easier. I think you've managed that extremely well.
And it's a daily grind, keeping family first. It's something that you cannot sleep on. You have to continually work at it. And in those daily interactions, a lot of times, I mean, I'll be totally honest, I fail consistently in different areas all the time. But I have a wonderful wife who keeps me honest and on point, with open communication and is willing to have the hard conversations to keep me straight. Everybody needs somebody for an accountability partner, right? And
correct, that's true.
And it's good to have that in any type of relationship, whether that's with your spouse or whether that's your parents or it could be your kids as well. I mean, it just or a mentor that's there for you, and somebody has to keep you grounded and keep you accountable.
I agree. And now, lately in law enforcement, and what I'm realizing, no matter if you're in corrections, you're working for the state, wherever, there's been a big push for mental health awareness in law enforcement. And I know there's studies out there that says law enforcement as a whole has higher suicide rates than your average citizen. But on top of that, corrections is even higher than all of them. Now, yeah. In one of your roles, you do a lot of training now. Like you run a massive department of training. So what shift have you seen in the last 25 years, especially in corrections, to kind of improve mental health awareness?
Well, to be totally honest, I think it starts with talking about it, right? I think in history, a lot of times, especially with men, and of course I don't have statistics on this, but most men will not talk about those issues, whether it's substance abuse or whether it's a mental illness. There's so many different links to studies of how suicide becomes that thought process. But I think a lot of times we just have to be open, honest. We have to be able to communicate about it, not be afraid. It's almost like diversity and talking about diversity and inclusion, and too many people afraid to talk about race and history and provide some education and some understanding. Mental health is one of those things that, you know what, you just need to get over it. Well, that's not true. People don't just get over it.
Yeah.
There are things that people need to meet head on, whether it's things to, that might be medically necessary, medication, counseling. It could be finding other things in life that help you to achieve, wellness on a different level. Maybe it's exercise, maybe it's meditation, maybe it's reading, maybe it's getting out on the lake and kayaking, maybe it's having that pet that's next to you that keeps you calm and serene. Finding those finite details to better prepare you for difficulties in life. It's not just in the career, but difficulties in life. A lot of times we see people on a daily basis interacting at work, and we forget about the real life issues that people are dealing with at home. It could be financial issues. It could be marital, it could be health related issues, things that people don't want to discuss or talk about that lead down this road. It is important that we open up communication. Communication is the key to our success. And if we had built relationships like we started off with, if we focused on family and created family in our work environments, and we created an open communication line, then maybe we tapped into health and wellness a little bit quicker across law enforcement over the years, and maybe the statistics would be different, and maybe we could have saved a life, or we could have identified something. We could have been that last friend, that last resort that stopped something, some type of tragedy. And then we have to focus on, if that tragedy still occurs, they have family. So what do we do after that? What type of interactions do we have with family and friends? How do we bring people in? How do we assess everybody's well-being in those situations? Because it doesn't stop. It's continual from that point. We gotta find a way to humanize the job. Like, it is so rough and tough, and you want to stick your chest out in law enforcement and be the big guy on campus, but there comes a time where you just have to be real and raw and open and honest. And guess what? We all have feelings. You might have one, but we all have feelings.
Correct.
Being willing to tap into them and communicate about them, I think is a representation of a change in culture. And maybe it's necessary that we talk about, Gen X and millennials, and we had doers, and now we have people that ask why. Maybe that's necessary to have that bridge, so that we're opening up those lines and wondering why things are happening, instead of just saying, this is what we're going to continue to do. We're going to work hard and we're going to push through it because you'll get over this. Man, finding that structure and that organization in your life that allows you to be healthy, it's important. I think for me, that's been one of those huge things to focus on over years. I think you and I have had this conversation that I always knew that I'd get to a point in my career and in my life that I wanted to retire young and early, because I wanted to enjoy my family. And I wanted to do that because, in my life, my mom and dad both died young. My grandparents were all gone. And I did not want to be that parent for my children that was not there. Or I now have the opportunity to spend time with a grandchild, man. I got
that's so cool.
Yes, a handsome grandkid, and and he's just amazing. And those type of engagements and interactions are man, there is nothing more important than those right now. So finding that balance for yourself, finding that emotion, tapping into your heart, and understanding that we're all real. We all hurt. But we got to find the things that are important to focus on, and redirect those negative thoughts into positive thoughts and create a better environment. And one of the quotes that I like to say to people all the time, and it's something I just made up, and I've always said it, and it's, a positive outlook leads to a positive direction, leads to a positive outcome. Out of that statement, there's no negativity. And so that's kind of what I like to do to keep my focus on wellness.
Yeah. And, as you talked about it, and I thought about, you hit on the generational differences, and it's interesting how we always look at the different generations and kind of like almost like the younger ones, we're looking at them kind of weird, like what's wrong with them, like what are they thinking? But when you actually look at the studies where the suicide rates are happening are actually in the older generations. So when you actually start looking at the numbers, you're like, so who's actually doing it right when it comes to mental health? Is these questions that are being asked now by the newer generations making sense? Because I want to say that, and I don't have the exact year, but it was either 2011 2013. A researcher did a study on police officers out of Buffalo, and what he found was officers that he compared officers that retired after like 51 to somebody that wasn't 51, and the life expectancy after retirement was about 7 years for law enforcement. For non-law enforcement, it was about 30 years. So it wasn't like he said you retired at 20 years old and your life expectancy was 7. He said, no, these are people that are considered old school, older generation that's not making it. So when we start looking at some of the changes, it's almost like how it's like the reason the fact that people are asking why now should have been asked a while ago. So like when you're looking at some of the stuff you're preparing and you're thinking like, hey, how do I know that the new generation is asking it, but it's really the old generation that's going to get hit first because they're the one that has accumulated stress. They have trauma stacked on trauma. How do you address them? Because they're the ones that are probably going to have a quicker impact than someone that is younger that's already asking about it ahead of time.
Well, I think the first thing is you don't make it look like it's catered to one group or another, right? So
correct.
It's open communication for a group. When you look at training, you're trying to find a way to impact and to create change by utilizing everybody's emotions, experiences, knowledge, education, whatever it might be. And when it goes to trauma, I think all those across the board are important because then you can hear different views and perspectives and get an understanding from a different level. I'm not going to lie, man. I learned a lot of great insight from the youth that are coming up in our agency or in law enforcement as a whole, or man, from my kids. The things that people know now because you have the internet, the intraweb in the palm of your hand, and they have access to so much that creates a different type of educational organization for them. You know, when we were kids, man, you were excited to have one of the encyclopedias that were bought because they were expensive as heck, and you had to buy 26, but like every year you'd buy one, you know, A through C.
Yeah.
You get one, but you know, our kids don't understand that, man. They have the world at the palm of their hand. So I think it's important to tap into those differences and the whys and the whats are going on, asking those questions, because you know, when we were young, we were taught from the, you know, baby boomers, no, you put your head down, you work through it, you get over it. You know, you're going to have tough times, you're going to bleed, rub some dirt on it and push on. Well, it's just it's a different type of environment, and motivation is completely different, right? Our traumas and our hurts, I think, are from that lack of communication and understanding and education. And we didn't talk about things. You just kept them in a little lock box, and then, you know, you kept feeding that lock box until that lock box just explodes and creating this problem where you're indicating that you know the statistics are invaluable, right? I mean,
it's real.
And we created that lock box that exploded for ourselves, which led us down a road of unhealthy decisions, alcohol, you know, drugs, you know, whatever it could be. There are so many different things to get stuck on. And then you're negative because that's what you're locking away a lot of times is negative experiences. And when you hold on to negativity, that's what you become. That's your investment in you. So if you're investing negativity into your account, the only thing that you're ever going to withdraw or that somebody's going to withdraw from your account is just that.
Yep.
So the thought process of training's got to change, right? I mean, it's got to be motivational. It's got to be positive. It's got to be leaning in a new direction. Is this, we're not in the 50s anymore. This is 2023. We're about to be in 2024. But yet so many people want to still be stuck on 1950. We're far past those time frames. We've got so much more technology and awareness and education and opportunity and experience not to create change in training. And training is the key to our success.
It really is. It's true.
It's no different than rearing a child, right? You have a child is in training to be an adult, right? And hopefully in life, out of that training, you're hoping that your kids make great decisions. In law enforcement, it's the same thing, man. We're rearing law enforcement professionals to be the best at what they can do and hoping that their decision-making skills take off like the way it's supposed to be, following laws and policies and rules and regulations and doing what's right, while also having some compassion and some empathy and good communication skills and those abilities to make change. So if we can create that now, maybe 20 years down the road, maybe we're not having this discussion anymore. So if we're putting that type of oversight on our training materials and curriculum and delivery, right? Delivery is the method which people draw to. So
Right.
That's all important. The person who's teaching, the curriculum that's being taught, the information that's being used, the statistics that are being brought to the table, the interaction and engagement that you're getting from your course. I mean, those are all things that are so important in creating change, and training will retain staff. It will also recruit them in the end, but the retention is where we need to be first. So you want to put that time and the effort to those that you currently have. You always hear, well, that's our weakest link, right, Mike? You heard that before?
Yeah, of course.
But if you don't invest time into that weakest link, how do they grow?
Yeah, it's true.
And I've seen some people that I thought were on the surface, right, that you didn't think that they would ever grow, but when you put the time and the effort and the focus into somebody, and you show that you care, man, the things that you can see some people achieve is tremendous. And I'm sure that years ago, when I started my career for the Bureau of Prisons, a gentleman by the name of Frank Lara, I wonder if he saw that in me and took me under his wing and really was my mentor, and still today is not only my mentor, but one of my best friends that helped me achieve success beyond my imagination. And that was just from those interactions from the very beginning.
You said a lot, and I think what I'm going to pull out of all of that you said, and I want to see agencies going to it more, like nationwide. First and foremost, California had implemented or has implemented into all their training a mental wellness portion of their post certification. So every new recruit that starts, like I forgot what date it's effective, they have to go through at least one whole day of mental health awareness. Like, obviously, their academies are a little bit longer. I think they run anywhere from 5 to 6 months, so they can incorporate that. However, it's now a mandate. But getting back to the whole concept of training is what leads to actual retention. So there's a lot of organizations, whether it's the feds, local PD, sheriffs, that I see. I'm sure I could type in law enforcement recruitment incentives right now, and you will see everybody giving 5, 10. DC was given 25 grand at one point. But I think we're creating a culture that's going to influence people to leave versus using that same money to keep them there. Because if you can spend, let's say, 10 grand on a recruitment incentive on an employee. Well, let's say you divide that by 4 and you put 4 of your current employees through training. Statistics will show that they're going to stay longer, especially if it's those iffy people. And sometimes at $2,500, it might be more like $150. That they might be fine with that. But I think we're getting too far ahead of trying to throw money at a problem versus increasing the internal controls to just improve. So once again, you have a big impact on training. Do you see or have you experienced where that hiccup kind of happens where it's so much about, hey, let's spend on recruitment, like nationwide through like a PD or a sheriff versus say, hey, you know what? XPD, why don't you take that $100,000 you have allotted, divide it up by your officers and put them all through training so you can keep people longer versus letting them go somewhere else?
I will tell you, for me, money does not fix everything. Yes, it's a Band-Aid for a short period of time when you have a smaller group of people that are doing double the work. It might be an incentive that is a short-term fix to until you are able to recruit and retain individuals to redistribute the workload. I don't really think the money makes a big impact, Mike. I really don't. I think that it's a necessary evil because people that are doing double the work will think that they need additional finances or compensation for doing the duty. So I think it's good for a short period of time to provide an incentive, right? Now, with that, you can't sleep on the fact that you have got to increase retention and increase recruitment. So our best recruiters are who? 85% of law enforcement agencies, and I did look this up at one time, that trying to get some information for a different speaking engagement. 85% of most law enforcement agencies, their best recruiter is their staff.
Yes.
So the employees, if they are not engaged and they are not happy and they are negative and they don't feel valued and they don't feel cared about and they don't feel like they're paid in accordance with other agencies, or they are not going to provide prospective employees the information that we need to really be getting out to the public to recruit people and to get them to stay. Number one, if I'm that negative, eventually I'm going to leave this career or look for a different opportunity.
Yes.
The older generations may not, because they learn to stick with it even through that negativity, right? But the younger generation, the millennials, for sure, money is not the biggest drive for them. And I'm going to use my daughter as an indicator here. So my daughter graduated from the University of Texas at San Antonio with an IT degree, and she came out of college and she started working for Vision Works, and it was a great gig for her. It was a great career. She liked the people that she was working with. She was working from home, so it was a remote position. Then our agency had started making these changes, and they were offering up to anywhere from 98 to 128 for IT specialists, remote with a federal agency. And I told my daughter about it, and she's like, well, how's the environment? She didn't ask, she didn't care about the money. She said, how's the environment? And I said, how is your couch? It's remote. And she's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about, Dad. I still have a relationship with a team of people remotely that I care about genuinely, and that care about me. And so in that, it taught me that both remote positions, far different pay setting, but the the relationships mattered
Uh-huh.
more. And that was a huge eye opener for me. And also I was very proud of my daughter for making that statement and standing up to her dad and saying that, the atmosphere is what matters, because, my old way of thinking was, I can get you in, you can make more money, you could
Correct.
be
Yeah.
you could be a legacy child in our agency, you got your dad's last name. And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, I am making my own path. I am doing it with relationships and an environment that I love. Um, so incentives are good for a short period of time, Mike, and I think they create a lot of problems because all the incentives start rolling in and everybody starts complaining. Well, this person got paid more than I
Yeah.
did, and I think it creates more problems. But it also increases the workload for a lot of staff that we didn't first work to improve our staffing in those areas and then offer incentives. We offered
Correct.
incentives, which created so much more work on a limited amount of staff. So now we put some stress on the people that are working those incentives,
True.
and they didn't get any additional help. So you you don't want to put the cart before the horse. You got to get the horse out in front, and the horse has got to be healthy. And we got to do a really better job of creating that atmosphere, changing the culture, creating an atmosphere, increasing communication, respecting people's thoughts and opinions, right? So it's everything that we've been talking about. It's the relationships, humanizing our job, finding that balance, communicating the issues, actually having that talk so that we can have some wellness, and then improving off of those, the training that we do for people to keep them. If we retained all these people and these people were happy and they were bringing in other employees or prospective employees, then we would be filling up like the boatloads. We would be retaining people, and then the incentives might actually make a difference. But it's all got to happen together. It can't happen. One can't happen without the other. It's got to be a group effort, a team effort.
I agree. And I love that you use the word culture, because I was listening to a presentation by the CEO of Command Presence. His name's John Bostaine. He actually has a law enforcement background, was a instructor at Glencoe for almost 12, 13 years. Actually, no, maybe 15 years. And he left Glencoe as an instructor, which most people love to do, to open his company on leadership. And one of the primary thing he talks about is culture. And three of the things that he touches on in his three keys to an extraordinary culture: one is leadership training at all levels. He says that he trains people on leadership out, like that's his goal. Is like, hey, he wants that secretary to start going through leadership training all the way to that CEO. Next thing he talks about is having an intentionally designed culture, meaning that he wants people to have an actual mission statement that they know, not just something that's made up. But if people in the organization don't know the actual mission statement, how do they go past it? And then finally, the last thing he talked about was succession planning, actually giving people a path to know what they're going to do. So that secretary early on, giving that person some kind of path of, hey, well, as you do so long as a secretary here, then you do a case manager, or you do some role that's after that, maybe go to human resources. So I think, and I concur with what you're saying, a lot of training, and I think where we're going to see the retention improve is looking at training early and often, not giving somebody money right out the gate, so to speak, and saying, let's see what happens. Like, well, let's get training into place. Let's train what we have already, and then bring in people once we get to that point. Because I think that it has to be a balance of both. But for me, I feel like it's unbalanced right now. And that's just me having a speaking business and traveling around the world, talking to different people. And they talk about, oh yeah, I have this signing bonus. But then I ask them, well, what training do you have outside of the normal firearms, driving, defensive tactics? Like, what do you have outside? And they're like, well, I don't have anything else. And I'm like, well, you got to think everybody's offering incentive. What's going to actually make you different? And it's that internal training that's focused on, let's say, personal development, maybe financial planning, like actual training that they can see, because they're going to go recruit other people saying, hey, you know what? Bryan Dobbs over here with the federal prisons, look at everything they're doing for us. They're not just giving us a great salary. They're not just giving us great benefits, but they're making us whole people. They're giving us all this different training to just make us good. They're putting us through 7 Habits. They're putting us through Dale Carnegie courses. They're putting us through Tony Robbins, whatever it might be. Because I think that for the balance to occur, you have to have both. But I still, for me, I feel like it's unbalanced. I think that it's not easy. Obviously, it's easy from afar to say, hey, this is what you have to do for 36,000 employees, or this is what you have to do for 10. But I do believe that once the emphasis is more directed on internal training outside of the requirements, so to speak, I think that's where you're going to see the retention improve.
Well, I totally agree. I was sitting here thinking and listening to you, and I was thinking about, you know, your agencies or any law enforcement entity, whatever their mission or their goal is, you know, you either rise to the level of your capabilities or you fall to the level of your preparedness, right? So in preparedness, that's training, right? That's getting involved and getting engaged. That's your education. That could be just interactions. That could be experience. That I think Martin Luther King said that character and knowledge is the true meaning of education, right? So when I break that down and I think it's your character, it's who you are, it's everything that you've been taught. It's character and knowledge. Knowledge didn't mean that you had to be educated by a higher learning entity, that you had to go to college. It's just character and knowledge. Knowledge is developed over time. It's experiences, it's locations, it's interactions, it's diversity, it's communication, it's positivity, it's positive moments, it's negative moments, it's how you climbed back to the top when you fell down. It's all those things that determine what your education is, right? And it's being prepared. And you mentioned 7 Habits, and I think it's funny that we talked about, you know, knowing your agency's mission statement and understanding what you're working for. But 7 Habits is also one of those things that you and I have gotten to experience together, that that talks about creating your own mission statement, right? And what are those values in your mission statement? What do they teach you? What are you driven by? What are you trying to achieve? And I think it's so important. I just think that, you know, I have mine, and I think about it all the time. I reread it all the time to make sure that I am steady working on the characteristics that I think are important, or the morals that I think are important, the things that brick and mortar build me up to become a better leader or transformational leader or trainer or father or friend or whatever it may be. So it's funny. I had mine pulled up from a couple days ago because I was thinking of where I started in my career and where I am now. When you put the focus on things, and when you're thinking about training others and preparing people, and I shared this with somebody just the other day, and it's, my focus is not merely to lead, but rather to inspire and ensure that I assist others in becoming the best leaders they strive to become, to leave a legacy of loving others and creating passionate and caring innovators. These leaders will be the examples for everybody to emulate. These trailblazers will continue thriving in leadership with humor, with knowledge, with drive, with experience, with understanding, and with extreme confidence. Leading, teaching, and training always, even when adversity strikes. They are persistent, and they refuse to fall victim to the negativity of this world or any law enforcement entity. That was like, it was so important for me to have something in my mind that was ethically and morally my driving force for why I do what I do, because so many people lose focus on what's important Not everybody can do this job. Not everybody can be in any law enforcement career, but definitely not in corrections. Corrections is a total different animal. When you are securing what other people fear, when everything that you watch on Fox television or CNN, and you see the arrests, the terrorism attacks, the murders, the large drug cartels, everything that you could imagine, um, that bring nightmares, are what we deal with. So back to the entire beginning of our conversation of creating a different culture and increasing communication and caring about each other and humanizing our careers, and being understanding and educated and creating better training so that we know who we're interacting with and dealing with, and getting to a place and knowing what you're doing for your agency, but what you're doing for yourself and for your family. What is important to you? These are all structures that you can't do one without the other. It's all a balance of one energy ball that you have got to maneuver each and every day, and turn it around and look at different focus from the 360-degree angles, right? You got to look at it
Correct.
from its so I'm telling you, man, this is it's a different day and age, and I just think that all this stuff melts together. um it's fluid, right? Should be.
Yeah, and it is. It really is. And I mean, it takes time, because if the framework couldn't be replicated, it would never have been created in the first place. It's just a matter of the right minds getting together and putting it together. And that could be I think that's sometimes the hardest part, because I know some things we talk about is funding and other things in different departments and stuff like that. But sometimes it's like, hey, we can get things for free. There's so many different organizations and so many different grant programs that allow for any type of training. I think that it's just a matter of looking. But speaking of training and speaking of all these funding programs, you actually opened your own business called Livewire Motivation. What was your motivation behind it? And mind you, you've had 10 leadership roles in the last 25 years. So it's not a matter of experience that you talk about, but what was your driving force in opening Livewire Motivation?
Honestly, daily interactions with employees, with family members, with friends, seeing the things that were important to them, or things that they were lacking, right? So I wanted to Livewire Motivation is just like a transparent, raw kind of daily motivational resource that I focus on leadership and work ethics and positivity. It could utilize quotes and experience, education, different things that may happen to friends of mine that they allow me to share. It's family, it's faith based. It's just a backbone to encourage positive thinking and influence positive impacts in our communities, right? Whether our community is locally based in a small town, or in an agency where you have a voice where you can share those type of impactful moments. You're not always the one that has the experience. I always tell people, man, that leadership as a whole, because this is a kind of a leadership based entity, Livewire Motivation, and Livewire really comes from me, because I'm just like a cracked can of monster all the time,
Yeah.
and I feel like I can shock you sometimes by some of the things that I say, because they may be too raw for some people, but I don't mean them in a negative way. I mean them to get your attention and to draw your attention to listen to experiences from other people, to understand different upbringings, or the differences in a financial structure and where you came from. You might have grown up on government cheese, right? And you might have grew up with the golden spoon in your mouth, but one doesn't always talk to the other. So this is a way to kind of blend the two, to get people to listen to everything or to read about it. And it's been very impactful. And I think over the years that I've been doing this, there's, no monetary kind of kickbacks. This is just time and effort that I put into create better leaders, better people, better fathers, better just education. I just wanted to leave a legacy of positivity and impactful statements or information for people to ponder and to chew on and to hopefully make change in their lives. That was Livewire Motivation, man. I'm just so passionate about it, and I just think that I have responsibility to everybody, right? And people are like, why do you have responsibility to everybody? Because you chose to be in a leadership position that you were chosen for it. And there's a difference, right? You can be in a leadership position and not be a leader, and you can be a leader and not be in a leadership position. So understanding that is the key to your success first. Number two, some people manage and some people supervise, but some people lead. And I don't care about the titles or the positions or none of that. I don't care about the money. I care about the impact of what we leave on people, right? That lasting moment, how you make people feel and how you treat them and how you train them and how they get excited and passionate like you are is what they'll remember. They're not going to remember other things. They're going to remember that about impactful moments. So Livewire Motivation is just that. It's my responsibility. And I break responsibility up into two words, right? It's my response to my ability. So I have this ability to get in front of people and to relay positivity and information to hopefully impact a agency or a department or the nation in a way that that can create change. And I think we're in that moment. Like I said, we're not 1950 no more. So we have to be in an area that's creating change. You and I had a discussion a while back about public speaking, and you've been prodding me to get out and get public speaking for a while, and for all the viewers, I genuinely, that is my goal and my dream. With the time and the hours that are spent in my position, I haven't had that opportunity yet, but the day is coming, and I'll get to work on hopefully, that portion of my life, and maybe it turns into something bigger. But if it doesn't, I'm okay with that. As long as I can impact people in a positive way, I don't care if it's talking to somebody at a bus stop or at the dental office, or if it's speaking to 3 or 100 or 3,000 people in an audience. I want to be in a position to make positive impact in our nation. And I think that people like us, I don't think that there's enough public speakers that are out there trying to create change in culture. We got to bring positivity back. That's just the bottom line.
So I heard a vision statement, or I heard a vision coming up. So in the next 5 years, what do you see with you and Livewire Motivation? Like, what if people looked at your LinkedIn page 5 years from now? What would you want them to see?
Wow. Wow. Put me on the spot here, Mike. What I would like to achieve. I think I have a lot of experience and knowledge in this head and this heart of mine, and I've been a really good writer, but I've never been a really good writer for myself. And I would like to create that change, right? And bring out a lot of those things that have made me who I am, from my humble beginnings, and my family, whether it's starting with my mom and my dad, and
Mm-hmm.
a broken marriage and relationship, to having, you know, step parents and step brothers, and then just in life, the things that happen that are positive and negative in life that help create the type of person you grow into. The impact that the military made on me, because this is 30 years of government service for me.
Mm-hmm.
Those kind of things that come into, who a person becomes. Everything matters. So that's why it's so good to create relationships and get to know people, because you I always try to wonder what made that person driven or focused or so passionate about something. It could be farming, right? And you're talking about cattle. But the simple fact is, when somebody's so passionate about it, what got them there?
Correct.
So I would like to write a book. I would like to have that book published. Um, I would like to do some speaking engagements. I don't know how big I would like to become. That's not the overarching um, agenda for me. It's not about money. It's not about prestige. It's about legacy, and it's about making people better. So, public speaking and an author, I think in the next 5 years is possible. And who knows, maybe sometime in the future me and you get to do something together with training or public speaking, um and and work together to create some kind of shift in this world. And that's all that we can really do, is make a difference.
And I agree. I mean, I think for you, and I'll be straightforward, I think you're selling yourself short. I think that can happen in the 6 months after you retire, whenever that might be. I think for you, given the passion, the energy, the knowledge, the drive, just you have the overall package to do both. I think by year 5, you might have 3 or 4 books published, and you might be turning down speaking engagements because they're going to be coming in so much. So I know it's, and I tell, and it's crazy because sometimes in government organizations, we're not always trained to look on the outside as far as like being entrepreneurs or having a side hustle. But then once you hit that area, you're like, oh man, this isn't as hard as I thought it would be as far as how much you can get to. But when you're looking at it like from the side of being internalized, and it's kind of like, it's like, well, how hard is that? It's like, well, all you have to do is reach out, because people are always looking for speakers. People, like you said earlier, there's not enough speakers out there that's delivering motivation and positivity. It's just not, it's not prevalent as people think. So for you, I think that Livewire Motivation would probably, the same thing you're aiming for in 5 years, it probably could be done in 6 months. But you're right, it does take time. It does take some energy to do. It takes the focus, and it's, I know it's impossible, especially at the higher CEO level positions, to do both. But I think once you have the opportunity to spend any time within it, I think that goal will be easy to accomplish. I just have 5 years just to throw I really should have said a year, but I was like, you know what? I'm just going to throw 5 years out there to give them the benefit of the doubt. But I think it could be done in 6 months. And it's like you said, the connections you've built, because I think you can easily give a keynote right now for an hour of motivation without having a lot of prep. Prep would make it better, but I think given everything you've been through in your life, I think you can easily create that level of awareness and inspiration to audiences, whether it's like you said, 300, 400, 1,000, whatever it might be. So for us as the audience and listening on, I know I can tell you, I can speak a little bit from my audience, but we can see it just in the short time of this podcast episode that you have all the tools to get there. You just got to have the time to do it. I think that's always a hurdle for everybody.
Yes, I think over the years, it's always been that thing, right? You and I have talked about it on numerous occasions, and you know, even though I haven't come on to the podcast to speak specifically about the Bureau of Prisons, but just in my time and how I came up, I started off at the very bottom as a bottom level correctional officer, and moved my way up through the agency to where I became a lieutenant and a captain, and an associate warden at several places, and then I was a warden at 3 places, a complex warden being one of them, and then now with my position now as a senior deputy assistant director, having the opportunity to make broad stroke changes with helping others in training. These are all the things that I always wanted to be a part of, and this agency has given me such great opportunities, and I'm just so pleased with my career. And even through difficulty, those difficult times and moments in your career, they're way outweighed by the positive impacts and opportunities that the agency's allowed me to do, which has led me to have that goal, that 5-year goal, to do some public speaking. Because as you know, in my duties, in my leadership positions that I've held, there is a lot of public speaking, and there's a lot of moments where you deal with tough times and tough moments, or just the other, just being real, being open, being raw. And you have to be able to read these situations and the scenarios, and build from all those areas. So whether it's a counseling moment to a motivational moment to those are the kind of things that this career has brought out of me, because a lot of that was learned dealing with tough situations through my career. And so yes, I look forward to, just like motivating inmates and staff. You have to care about everybody. If you're in a law enforcement position and you forget to care to make people better, not just your employees, but in our environment, the inmate population, the whole thing is to get people back into the streets and make productive citizens out of people. But at the same time, as law enforcement officers, to be to have that compassion and that focus to make each other better, to hold people accountable. I always say those bookends, that it's accountability and encouragement. You have to have an equal amount of both. People have to be held accountable, whether that's the community and people doing the right thing. That's why we have law enforcement, and we have law. And people want to be held accountable. People want to stay within the law on the most part, but that encouragement is just as important. You have to be able to take somebody who, say, has stepped out of the box as it comes to the accountability stage, and you got to be able to bring them back in and encourage them to be a better version of them. So yeah, I mean, this career, this life, motivating others, training people, I think it all comes back just about being human and thinking about things from different perspectives, to create change and stay positive at all times.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. I know the Bureau of Prisons has offered a lot of people great opportunities to grow and build, and sometimes it's, once again, and that's why one of the things I love about this podcast is that it highlights not just the individual, but it highlights different parts of the law enforcement industry. And I've had people retired, I've had people, sheriffs, I have prior federal agents, current. But once again, as when I started off the show, you don't hear about corrections as much. And what people don't realize is that the Bureau of Prisons is the largest prison system in the U.S. And that's outranking state prisons like Texas and California. So when you hear that, how you got to think how many employees are involved. Like it's 36,000 plus employees in the federal government. So, well, in the federal prison system, let's put it that way, the Bureau of Prisons. So when you look at all the opportunities there, it's actually an amazing organization to work for because you get a lot of opportunities. Now, obviously, you do have to take them. You do have to look at the different risks. You got to say, well, am I willing to move? Am I not willing to move? But even if you're not, there's still a lot of opportunities. I think that's where people can see like, hey, this is something you can grow into. Because like everything else, it's like you hear prisons, you're like, oh, I don't want to be stuck behind a wall, opening and closing cell doors. People don't understand the other side. Like you said, people don't understand that in your role, you do a lot of public speaking, you do a lot of training. And it's like, oh, yeah, somebody does have to train their staff. Yeah, somebody has to. So it's definitely something that's, I know from even my view of it, it's been amazing to see how much you can grow in its own little community.
The leadership perspective, when you start talking about corrections as a whole, you've got people that are walking and talking and are the examples for the inmate population. So our staff are communicating with incarcerated individuals, men and women, every day, trying to be a positive example for those who have made some mistakes. Now, the reality is this: you have good inmates and bad inmates, and you have good employees and bad employees. I don't care what law enforcement entity you work in. However, there are so many times to where the media only displays the bad portions of law enforcement. And honestly, there's so much good that happens in law enforcement every day, especially in corrections. The amount of education and counseling sessions and breakthroughs and creating opportunities where recidivism is just totally eradicated, and getting to the root of people's drug problems or drinking problems because of all the courses that we have, residential drug treatment programs, or Alcoholics Anonymous, or teaching people how to balance a checkbook, to teaching them how to do a resume. There are so many things. It's a big world. It's a community with inside razor wire fences or high top walls with towers. However you want to imagine it, people imagine prison from movies, Shawshank Redemption and the corruption and all that kind of stuff. But there are so much positive things that happen in a correctional environment, whether you work for the TDC or California Department of Corrections, or the Department of Corrections for Arkansas, or you work for the Bureau of Prisons. All these employees are providing an example to those inmate populations, hopefully in a positive manner. And if they're not, that's where we're lacking in the things that we're discussing right now. And that's humanizing what we do, understanding what we do, providing the appropriate training, not just for the employees, but we train the inmate population as well. I think you and I at one time initiated a 7 habits for the inmate population.
Correct.
And
that's true.
A lot of people in the public don't know about those positive things that we do. It's just, there's so much more, and it makes me so much more passionate about being in law enforcement and working in corrections when you get to interact with somebody who understands. So it is a passion.
Yeah, and it's definitely a calling, and I think every industry that's in law enforcement is a calling in its own nature. I can tell you the few organizations I've worked for, everyone has a slightly different calling, but it is a calling nonetheless. So I did promise you I wouldn't keep you up too late and keep you too deep into this. So as we round out, if somebody wanted to reach you, what would be the best way? If they said, hey, you know what, Bryan, we loved what you said on this podcast. We want to know more about Livewire Motivation. We want to see how you're humanizing law enforcement from the correction side. How can they reach you?
I think, well, number one, thank you for even throwing that out there. That's if you're trying to push me into that 5-year goal that we discussed, you're doing a really good job with it. But LinkedIn is a great format. And if they wanted to reach me, obviously preface your show, LEO first, and let me know where you heard of me from and heard of me through. I am open to conversation and to interaction and to training and to whatever the future holds. I really look forward to what tomorrow brings, and I don't know what it is. I would like to be that person who says I know exactly what I'm going to dream up and achieve. Ultimately, for me, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. If the opportunity presents itself to make people better and to share my experiences, although we have not been able to delve deep into the things that I have been through in my career, as I am still currently working for my organization. I will be able to talk more about that, when the time comes and I'm retired and moving forward in the speaking world. So LinkedIn, Facebook is another opportunity. I Private messaging always works good. And matter of fact, if they want to reach out through you, it's a great thing about having relationships with people is somebody always knows someone else. True. And personal interaction and knowing people's hearts and minds and outlooks. Sometimes you have to create a conversation to understand what people are looking for, and then names pop to your head. So yes, that's where I'm at. LinkedIn and Michael Laidler.
So you guys heard him. Hey, if you guys are looking for him, LinkedIn, I'm active. Obviously, if you know this show, I'm active on a few social medias, not every single one of them. I can't figure out that TikTok thing. That just throws me off. But needless to say, LinkedIn is my favorite. If you want to reach Bryan, obviously get him up on LinkedIn at Bryan Dobbs. I think that conversation is just starting. I think you guys will be more than happy to hear a lot of things that he's been through on top of the show. Cause like he said, you can only hear so much in this hour and a half show to truly understand how much knowledge is there. So if you guys are looking for his style of leadership, the knowledge, I definitely recommend reaching out to him. Bryan, any final words for the audience?
Yeah. I kind of always leave every engagement with it's actually a play on a Native American phrase, and in corrections, I kind of remodified it. But it's called Two Wolves, right? And the way it kind of goes out, and if you're in any law enforcement entity, I want you to take the verbiage or the little pieces that you can change, and it could be officer to captain to lieutenant, whatever it might be, however your agency is structured. But in Two Wolves, one evening, an old lieutenant told an officer about a battle that goes on inside all people. He said that the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, it is envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance. It is self-pity. It is guilt. It is resentment. It is inferiority. It's lies. It's false pride. And it's ego. The other is good. It is joy. It is peace. It is love. It is hope. It is serenity. It's humility. It's kindness. It's benevolence. It's generosity. It's truth. It's compassion. It's faith. And it's justice. So the officer thought about this battle that's going on in every person for a minute, and then asked the lieutenant, which wolf wins? And the old lieutenant just simply sat and replied, the one you feed. So what I want to leave you with today is feed the good wolf. Be a positive impact and influence on your communities or in your agencies or in your families. Change culture, shift our way of thinking, train people to be better at what they do daily, and encourage a safer, more impactful legacy for yourself and for others by creating that change. And I appreciate you.
Oh, no problem. Well, you guys have heard it. What wolf are you feeding right now? And as you go into your career, or if you're thinking about being in law enforcement, or you just kind of wondered what goes on in law enforcement, what truly is going on with you? What wolf do you have that's coming out and being in your life? Well, depends on which one you feed. If you're going to teach, if you're going to feed the bad one, what are you going to get? If you're going to feed the good one, what you're going to get? So think about that. I think that's a great way to end the show. I think it's a great way for the viewers to hear and conceptualize what they're building on a daily basis, because whatever you build is what you're going to be. And I think sometimes people just hope for miracles, but they don't build towards it. But understanding that you're part of the process to grow is where you're going to see. And if you guys need help feeding the good wolf, Bryan's here for you. You can find him on his LinkedIn, and I'll make sure I'll put his link into the show notes so you guys can see it. But take that and let it resonate. And if you have more questions, reach out to him. See how he can help you build up that good wolf that we all want to see in all of you. Thank you all for being part of the show and listening. And I look forward to be able to speak with you guys on the next one. You all have a great night, great afternoon, whatever time it is, just be great.
You've been listening to the LEO First Podcast. Michael has been in law enforcement since 2005. He's worked for 3 law enforcement agencies in 3 different states. He's a professional speaker who travels the country teaching about leadership development and self-awareness. And he's the author of a book called Greatness Beyond the Badge: The 3 Key Principles for Self-Awareness. It's Michael's passion to bring law enforcement members' stories to the front, so you get the real and raw take. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Michael on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Michael Laidler, on Twitter at Michael A. Laidler, on Facebook at Michael Laidler Leadership. Send an email to michael@michaelalaidler.com and hit the website at michaelalaidler.com. See you next time on the LEO First Podcast.
Like that, I'm going to be leaving a note on vehicle driving and remote it.